Two young guns. Two players heading towards the Grandmaster title in their own sweet time. Two members of the Guildford posse fearlessly riding out to face the public on September the 11th. And before I get too carried away, their names are Harry Grieve and Matthew Wadsworth. And I'm pleased to say I've got a game from each of them for you on this short video. The first game comes from the British Championship played in 2015 between Harry Grieve playing white, now a FIDE master, heading towards IM rather quickly. And playing black, we've got Jonathan Wager, who is an experienced veteran player from the south of England. And he plays slightly unusually in the opening, I would say. Anyway, Grieve decided to open with e4, and black played knight c6, Nimzovich's defence. Not at all a bad move, and can lead to some very unusual positions, one of which we're going to see in this game. White offers black the chance to go back into something more regular by playing e5, an offer Wager declines with d6. And this is the strict Nimzovich defence move order, with black playing in a very provocative way here, allowing white to take the centre. And Grieve played bishop b5. I mean, there are many moves here. White can play d5, that's interesting. White can simply settle for bishop e3. But bishop b5 is a pretty good move, pinning the knight. And if black plays a6, white is going to take that knight, damaging black's pawn structure. In fact, Tony Miles had a great deal of success with Nimzovich's defence at a certain part of his career. It suited him to head for unorthodox positions. These days, with databases, with engines, with theory, I'm not so sure he would be keen to go into some of the main lines, because what Grieve plays here, I think, simply gives white a slight edge, and one which black can't really contest. However, the position is interesting. Now comes a good move, queen to e2. Well, black is offered the chance to take on f3 and gain a little bit of time, but he declines the offer. I don't think that would be a good move. Bishop takes f3. And one of the points of queen to e2 is that it facilitates queenside castling. White can move the bishop out from c1 and then castle. And it also prepares queen c4 at the right moment, which can be a very good square for the queen, eyeing up c6 and maybe f7 as well. Black played e6. And now g4. Here we go. Bishop g6. And I was quite surprised when I was consulting the databases here that bishop g5 is the mainline move, because I think h4 is a pretty good try for white here. One of the points of it is to more or less force black to play h5. I mean, well, black can play h6, but that's a little bit more defensive and more difficult to handle. h5, g5, knight d7, and now a really challenging move for black to face, d5. Black's got an interesting pawn formation here, kind of castle surrounding his king. Castle wall. And white's challenge is to break down that wall. How does he do it? Miles played these types of positions very successfully. And many of black's chances are tied up with the move queen b8 at some point, which eyes up white's queen side. The queen can come out to b4, or maybe to b6, or even to b7, creating some action on the b file. These days we know more about this type of position. d5 puts the question to black before queen b8 can be played. And it's quite a dangerous move. Suits Harry's style because he's very direct. He's quite an attacking player. And this is a good way to try to get the initiative. Anyway, it's a slightly nervy move for black to have to face. Wager tried to block the position, and white continued to open things up with d takes e6, f takes e6, and now the straightforward move, bishop to e3. Black put his queen on b8. That is what they do. And white castles on the queen side. Now, I'm sure this position is okay for black, but he's got to be careful. It's not straightforward to play such a position. In particular, to move that bishop from g6. You know, black would like to move it somehow. It's blocked in at the moment, but not that easy to move. And the king side is a little bit jammed up. So I think what black should do in this position is to play bishop e7, preparing maybe to castle. And if white plays queen c4, which is the main idea of queen e2 in the first place, or one of them, then black can play queen b4, which is quite an easy move to miss, giving up the pawn on e6, so that he can play, let's say, bishop f7, queen moves away, and now something like rook b8. And you see black is getting considerable counterplay. That's what he should have done. What he did was to walk into a hammer blow after knight b6, and now Harry is such a good tactician, he's not going to miss this opportunity. He moves in with bishop takes c5, which is an extremely damaging move. Well, Wager took it, no doubt, after long thought. Could he do better? Well, I mean, he can just accept that he's lost a pawn here and go bishop f7, with maybe e5 coming. After that, I think white should take on b6 so as not to lose any time, and then play queen c4 again. I think this is a good move here. And black is struggling in this position because he's got problems with his king. If he castles on the queen side, then we've got a move like g6, which really well locks the door on black's position. And as you can see, this is now turning out very nicely for white. Well, I mean, if you've received a great shock like bishop takes c5, you might not be able to react in the right way. And d takes c5 was what Wager played. And now white moves in with knight e5, which is, of course, a really good move. Hitting the bishop, making room for queen f3, and putting black in a really horrible mess. Knight g6. Well, that's a winning move. I don't think black can defend against that. It's a winning fork. But in a slightly unusual scenario, I mean, this is a pretty strange looking position. How could black ever get into such a mess? Well, it happened very quickly after bishop takes c5. Wager played bishop e7. Knight took on h8. And now black played g6, which, of course, is kind of like giving up. But what could he do? Could he play bishop d6 here to block the file? Well, that allows white to take on h5. King must move and just bring the knight back from g6. And this should be lost. I mean, black can try some things like knight c4 and queen b4. But then I think knight b1. Calm, scotches all threats. And, well, white should be winning from here. In the game, let's see it. g6 was played. White whipped that pawn off. In came the knight. This is virtually black's only source of counterplay here, to go for b2, but white just blocks it. And when the knight retreats, Harry settles for simple play. He takes off the bishop, queen f6 check, and Wager has had it in this position. He played king e8, queen g7, and black resigned. The main reason being that if he goes bishop f7, we just go g6, and that's the end. Just returning to the position after queen f6 check, you might have wondered why black didn't go king d7. Well, he can go king d7. We go e5. And now, once again, I think black is not long for this world. If he plays a move like queen e8, we can just take on d6 and put our knight on e4. I mean, on top of having a winning attack, white's also a rook up. There are some nice variations, though, if black plays d5, because we can re-sacrifice the rook and then land a check here. King c8 is forced. We take a pawn. And I think this leads to a complete crush. Well, it was a crush before, but this is even worse. If he goes king b8, we go check and check. And just backing up, if he goes king d8, we go check, check, and then mate. So a game, I think, quite attractive in its own way and very representative of Harry's strong attacking style. Now we come to Matthew Wadsworth, international master already, sure to be a grandmaster in time. Both of these guys are studying at Cambridge University, and Matthew's style is somewhat different. I would say it's more strategic than tactical. He tends to outplay people and rather than crush them. So I'm going to show you a game he played in a Title Tuesday tournament back in 2020, where he had the black pieces against a very strong player called Anna Berdiev. And this guy was graded 2663 on the chess.com rating system at the time. So we have to go all the way back to the start. Anna Berdiev was white, Matthew was black. So I'm going to flip the board. Let's see it in his vision. And after knight f6, white played this London system move, which everybody's playing at the moment. I mean, I can understand why people play it, especially in quick play chess. It's dead easy to play, and you just shunt out the moves. Standard plans are readily available, easy to understand. The problem with it is it stunts your creativity to keep playing this stuff time after time after time. You begin to think that chess is an easy game, and you're just shunting out these moves. I don't know how long this fad for the London system will last. I mean, it's lasted several years already. But in time, it's bound to drop away as people get sick and tired of playing the same old positions game after game. But I have to say, the London system can be a winning weapon. So, of course, that's why they all do it. Anyway, Matthew played c5. And I wonder whether if white played e3 here, black was going to try the interesting move knight d5, followed by queen b6. And this is an intriguing line, which has become popular for black. Very unstereotyped in the present day. We'll never know, because dropping back to c5, incidentally, I advocate having a look at that line if you fancy playing some really weird chess. But in this particular game, after c5, white pushed on with d5. I mean, that is a reasonable move. And Matthew responded with b5, which is, again, pretty good, quite sharp. Just a question here when white hasn't played c4 about whether that pawn can be attacked and exposed. Anyway, this is a quick game, so the game continued. They rattled out the moves, and black protected his pawn with queen b6. Knight d2. Yes, well, white's got the positional idea of a4 here, hasn't he? And the idea is that that's going to knock this pawn away from the control of c4, and then white gets to put his knight on c4, which when the black queen is on b6 already could be quite strong. And this is why Matthew plays bishop a6 to cover that base. White plays knight h3, then knight f2, g6. So what have we got here? We've got a kind of Benko Gambit-like position, except that white hasn't played c4. This makes white's position, I think, slightly more attractive, because he can try to attack the black pawn chain by playing a4 and then maybe follow it up with c3 at the right moment, should black walk on by. Well, this happened, a4, b4. White was delighted to take on a6 and then play queen e2. And the rationale behind that is that if he takes off the queens here, c4 will become much easier to occupy for the knight, with the knight. And black won't be able to shift that knight very easily. Well, Matthew was happy to take that. Bishop g7. And now g4, which was met by the uncompromising h5. I think that's a good strategic move, because it white's trying to cramp black all over the board, especially on the king side. Wants to put his knight on c4 and then get some sort of central pawn roller coming down towards black. Black's fighting against that plan, and he even castles on the queen side here, which is quite an unusual twist in this type of position. And one of the main ideas behind that, I mean, strong players never play without ideas, is that black could play king b7 here and then knight b6 to challenge a white knight on c4. So altogether, quite an interesting situation. Anyway, white played a5, so he understands what black is trying to do and tries to cut that out. And Matthew moved into action by taking off on g4, taking the rook off, and then rook h8. And now what black is hoping for here is, after general exchanges, actually this pawn on a5 could become a bit weak. But we quickly see here that it's actually quite difficult for black to attack it twice. He would have to put a knight on b7 in order to do that, plus the king on a6. And, well, he'd have to actually go into contortions to be able to do that. I'm not even sure that it's possible in the current position. So it looks like this game is heading for a draw, but maybe not, as some sharp and interesting complications now crop up. Well, white played knight d3. I mean, we can't fault him from that as a standard move. But I think actually he had an opportunity here to sack a piece. Let's take a look at bishop takes d6. and then knight takes d6. This is an interesting possibility here, when I'm not actually sure what black can play. If he plays king takes a5, white takes on f7 and then goes knight d3, and I'm not sure I like this position for black. He's a piece up, but all his pieces are kind of in the way of white's pawn roller. That might have been quite uncomfortable for black. I mean, if we go back, let's have a look at this sack again. Takes, takes, takes. What if he plays bishop g7 first? Knight here. King takes a5. Well, of course, I can go knight takes f7 like last time, but g5 first, and then knight takes f7 again. Poses black the problem of how he's going to stop white's pawns rolling down the board. This is a case of the piece not being as valuable as the pawns. Although white's only got 2 pawns for the piece, this is really dangerous. Well, you're going on field a lot in blitz games, and knight d3 was therefore played. Black covered the possibility of a sacrifice on d6. White played bishop g5. Of course, white's trying to win this game, you know, so he's probing, he's hoping to make some sort of game by blocking in the bishop on g7 and then f4. But I think black's got enough counterplay here, and we're coming to another interesting moment in the game where actually white makes a mistake. Just goes to show you, in this type of position, mistakes are possible, clear mistakes. Now, I think what white should certainly play is f5. Whether he can win this position or not, I'm not totally sure. He didn't do that. He played king f3, and he certainly missed black's next move, which is excellent. Matthew played knight a3. And with his style, he's not likely to miss such an opportunity. And suddenly, this position, surprisingly, is quite difficult for white. Well, I'm not sure how much time both players had on the clock at this point, but white played e5. Of course, he can't take the knight. I mean, if he takes the knight, then I'm not sure how this pawn is going to be stopped in the long run. I mean, white could play a move like knight c1 here. But, well, let's see. I mean, at the very least, I could take this pawn and then put my king on b5 or play c4 or something like that. Should be lost. He played e5 in the game, white. And now I think, well, Matthew should maybe take this pawn. I'm not sure what white does about that. Again, he kept it simple. He took on c4. And now white played e6. So from a quiet-looking situation, we've got suddenly a very sharp situation on the board. Black played knight d b6. White took it. Black took back with the knight. And now white misses a second opportunity to sack a piece here. He played king e4, which I think you'll agree is totally straightforward. But could he play bishop takes c5 here? This is interesting, with the point that if black takes it, d6. This is a possibility which could have been quite dangerous. I mean, actually, after bishop takes c5, we just drop back. Black can take on d5, allowing the capture on b4. But I think then, after takes, bishop g7, bishop takes d6, bishop f8, this was the idea. White could just drop away, and he should be winning this. I mean, a clear pawn up with a superior bishop. Just goes to show you, you know, these positions are pretty deceptive. It looks like not a lot is going on, but in fact, black's got threats just to roll his queenside pawns down the board, and white has threats as long as he can get past that black pawn chain. Well, king e4 was played, and from now on, Matthew's technique is excellent. He plays f5 to clear a way for his bishop, allowing the knight to take on d5, and then allowing the king to come up. And now I think with white a clear pawn down, and black's pawn roll on the queen side ready to go, I'm not sure I can see any hope. So now what we're going to see is an excellent display of technique by Matthew, just winning his one game. Pushing the passed pawn, blocking white off at every opportunity, takes, and even allowing bishop takes d6, because Well, black's pawn is touching down. White took on e7. Here we go. White's not quick enough. I mean, this type of thing could worry a weaker player, but for such a strong player as Matthew, it's fairly easy. Let's see how he does it, though. Queen c5, guarding the queening square, and now he brings his king in. Excellent. If e7, queen d6 check, picking off the pawns. If king g7, as happened in the game, queen e7, and that literally is the end. So White resigned. Quite an unusual and exciting game. So there we have it. Two young guns, and you might face them on September the 11th in Guildford High Street. Look out if you do, because they are both excellent players.